Greetings, this is Dinah Monahan
and Damon Evans bringing you Pro-Life Perspectives. This program is about all things pro-life. It's sponsored by White Mountain Tees in Snowflake. White Mountain Tees provides screen printing, embroidery, banner printing, merchandise with your logo on it, and much more for the White Mountain community. Whether it's 25 t-shirts for your family reunion or 5,000 for your big event, they can do it.
And Damon, they deliver your order right to your door. From Payson to Winslow, Pinetop to Springerville, they bring it to you. Go to whitemountaintees.com. That's whitemountaintees.com, or stop by their shop in Snowflake.
Dinah, last week you shared about your trip to Ethiopia and the abortion movement in that country, but I know that you're not just talking about the problem, but are also a part of the solution. So tell us about that.
I firmly believe that we can not only be known for what we're against, but also for what we're for. And I'm for life. But to take that stand necessitates us walking that out in practical ways. In Ethiopia, when a woman chooses life for her child, it is a courageous decision. Unlike here, there are no social programs, WIC, free tuition, or housing allowance. She's basically ostracized with no resources. I work with pro-lifers on the ground there who talk to the women who are seeking abortion. One of them is a friend, Abi, and he's actually opened a coffee shop right next to Marie Stopes' abortion clinic, and the young women will stop in. He sees their distress. He sits down and talks to them, and that's where most of our girls come from. When she chooses life for her baby, it could have some very, very difficult consequences. Being kicked out of her living situation is not uncommon. This is when Meseret is called. Meseret's compassion for these young women continued even after we closed the maternity home. And after Mike's death and then COVID, I reestablished contact with her, and we have again collaborated to help these young women. To avoid the many complications of community maternity home, we now house the young women in individual rented rooms.
I can imagine that's a lot more expensive.
Actually, it's cheaper than running a maternity home. And boy, are there a lot less problems. Over there, a room can be rented for under $100 a month. It is, by our standards, stark. But for them, it offers safety behind a locked door and protection from the elements. They're then enrolled in a 2-day-a-week program Meseret runs, where they are taught life skills, Bible lessons, and are given 2 meals a day. They earn money, which is put in savings for when they leave. The hand-sew clothes, which are given to the poor children in the villages in the rural areas.
Wow, that's an incredible program. I do have a few questions. How long can they stay in the program, and why don't you use sewing machines?
Well, I know. Well, I'll tell you what, they stay in the program for a year after the baby's born. As for the sewing machines, we've tried those at the maternity home. You know, if something goes wrong, and what could possibly go wrong with 10 totally inexperienced girls using a sewing machine.
Fair point.
It isn't easy to get them repaired, so they're sort of moved to the corner and just not used. But with a needle and thread, nothing can break but the thread. And the girls actually do really well. They've made 136 dresses, pants, and shirts so far.
That's so impressive. But I need to ask the obvious question. You helped them for a year, but then what? I know those who support abortion point to this as the perfect justification for aborting babies. And while I don't support abortion, I am curious how you respond to that.
Well, I actually get this a lot. And I want to say in our program, we are making plans for phase 2, which is to open up something for them to train and to be able to go out and have a job.
Be sustainable.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing, though. But even so, even if we weren't doing that, I know this. When you see killing as the answer to a social problem, you've opened a Pandora's box. Abortion takes the life of an innocent human being. When you look at a pregnant woman and say, that child is better off dead because he or she will end up in poverty, you really are putting yourself in the position of God. 3 of my grandsons are from Ethiopia. And believe me, if you had seen them in their circumstances when they were babies, they would have been the perfect example of that abortion mindset. But no one knows what the future holds. All 3 of my grandchildren have wonderful lives in front of them, and they're deeply loved.
That's so true, Dinah. But even if their lives did not end well, the issue is about their value as a human being. As followers of Christ, we should always offer life, never death.
Well said. And to the pro-abortion crowd, these impoverished children are the problem, and their answer is to abort them. To the Christian, these children have a problem, poverty, and we should work to alleviate that problem, not eliminate the child. When a culture becomes comfortable with the idea of using death to solve a social problem, it's on a downhill slide. Always on the heels of abortion is euthanasia, the infirmed, the handicapped, the elderly. They're all social problems. Killing them becomes the answer.
Well, yeah, just look at the Netherlands. They are set to euthanize, which is a nice way to say kill,
yes,
a woman because she has autism and deals with depression. In fact, according to El País news outlet, more than 9,000 Dutch people chose euthanasia in 2023, noting that euthanasia deaths make up more than 5% of all deaths in the Netherlands last year.
That's stunning.
In the U.S., there are 9 states that have legalized euthanasia.
It's not just euthanasia. Do you remember Terry Schiavo?
Terry Schiavo?
Schiavo? I don't know.
I do remember it, yes.
As a result of an accident, she'd been comatose for 15 years. Her parents loved her and insisted that she would respond with movements to indicate she heard them. Mm-hmm. But her ex, soon-to-be remarried husband, and by the way, he was her ex. He was not married to her at the time, but he wanted her out of the way. So he got a court order, and she was denied food or water, and she was legally starved to death. This was in Florida.
I remember.
And I also remember vividly the Baby Doe case in 1982. Baby Doe, they didn't even bother to name him, was starved to death in a hospital in Bloomington, Indiana. The death was sanctioned by the infant's parents, his physician, and the state. Despite offers to adopt the child, Baby Doe was purposefully starved to death by those who normally would be his protectors. You want to know what his crime was? He wasn't perfect. He was born with Down syndrome. Here's the irony. A month later, the Maryland Board of Veterinary Examiners fined a veterinarian $3,000, suspended his license for 60 days, and placed him on probation for 6 months. His crime? The doctor starved a dog to death. Unlike Baby Doe, the dog's life had value. The baby's life had none. While this case was highly publicized, the Bloomington case is part of a practice of infant starvation that is neither new nor isolated in this country. The October 23, 1973 issue of New England Journal of Medicine has an article addressing the issues of babies who are believed to have, in the words of the authors, quote, little or no hope for achieving meaningful humanhood, end quote. The article, Moral and Ethical Dilemmas in the Special Care Nursery, refers to an early death for handicapped infants as a, quote, management choice, with the usual treatment in such cases being nothing by mouth. That means starving him to death.
Yeah.
Furthermore, the authors note that over a 2-year period, 14% of the deaths in the hospital special care nursery that were studied were permitted to happen because parents and doctors had decided the children should not be allowed to live.
That's just appalling. I mean, the Nazis had the same attitude toward the handicapped. They rounded them up and exterminated them, and it's hard to believe that it's being done in the United States. But I believe that the acceptance of abortion starts that slide on that slippery slope of death.
You're right. As Christians, death should never be our solution. If someone is born without arms, we should be their arms. If someone is born without feet, we should be their feet. We are called to a standard that gives life, hope, and protection for those who need it.
Absolutely. And speaking of giving hope, I just want to remind people about New Hope Pregnancy Resource Centers in Show Low, Springerville, and White River. They exist to offer the choice of life for the unborn baby, hope for the mom, and help with parenting classes and material support. Listener, if you know any moms or moms-to-be who could use these services, be sure to share this with them. Call 928-599-1986. That's 928-599-1986, or go to newhopepc.org. Well, that's going to end our time for today. Fascinating discussion about Dinah's time in Ethiopia. We'll be back next week. Until then, be safe,
Be blessed,
be kind,
and love life.